أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله. So today I'm going to be talking about Surah 38 and 24, David's test. There's a story of the prophet, King David, in the Quran where two brothers jump over the wall to his private prayer quarters, asking him to judge between them in the situation that they were going through. One of the brothers had 99 ewes, female sheep, while the other one only had one. The rich brother convinced the poor one to turn his ewe over to the rich brother for him to rear. Without giving the rich man a chance to give his statement, David concluded that he was at fault. This ended up being a mistake that when realized, David had to ask God for forgiveness for. David grew up as a shepherd, so he could sympathize with the poor brother who was seemingly conned out of his possession by the rich one. It seemed unfair and greedy for the one who had 99 ewes already to take the one that his brother also owned, or that his brother owned also. There are a few things that need to be put in context here in order to get the lesson and the benefit out of the story. This story is a parable presenting abstract principles that we need to apply to our lives. It's in the nature of sheep to put the group before themselves. Their flocks are almost entirely made up of ewes or female sheep and their babies. They will not typically break away from the group to do anything on their own. In fact, when separated from the group, they'll be awkward, shy, and extremely nervous. They have very little to offer in the way of defense other than the sheer numbers of their flock. So they're extremely sensitive to leadership and will unwaveringly follow it, even to a fault. They are a generous asset to their owners. They represent an asset system that surrenders itself to the command of its owner in order to have some benefits extracted from it. That's what the sheep represent. Most people in the United States are not herding sheep, but many people pool their physical capabilities together to trade to an employer in exchange for wages. So they do physical labor for money. Many people pool their intellectual resources together to offer that as a value that can be traded for money. These are sheep. These are ewes. Still others know how to pool the resources of different people to run it through a system that multiplies the results, like a kernel of corn producing a stalk with multiple ears of corn, each having hundreds upon hundreds of kernels. So the rich man was not asking for his brother's ewe just to take it, to add to his own numbers. The wording that he used was the same wording that was used in the story of baby Moses. When Moses was pulled from the river and adopted by the Pharaoh's wife, he refused to drink from the milk of anyone that she had available. Finally, it was suggested to her to take the baby to a particular woman who baby Moses finally accepted to drink the milk from. And unbeknownst to the Pharaoh's wife, that was actually his biological mother. So the Pharaoh's wife turned the baby over to this woman to help feed him and nurture him where she was unable to do so herself. She was not giving up any of the rights that she claimed over her adopted baby, but she was just entrusting the baby to someone who could do more with the baby than she was able to do on her own at that time. So looking back at the story of David, the rich brother was more skilled at rearing and extracting the benefit from the ewes that he had control over than his poor brother was. He was a businessman, and he was asking his poorer brother to invest in his business so that he could multiply the returns for the eventual benefit of both of them. The problem was that the poor brother and David alike were so short-sighted and narrow-minded regarding this issue that they could not grasp the bigger picture. As someone who grew up as a shepherd, David was able to sympathize with the sentiments of the poor man who felt like he had been cheated out of his asset. David was thinking individualistically and wanted to give justice to the poor man who was in his feelings. As the king over a nation, David should have seen this whole conflict framed in the context of the collective picture. There's a concept in the world of business and marketing called platforming. This is the best way to get exposure to take your business to the next level. Growing a business organically from the ground up is an extremely difficult process, as it is long, slow, and it's a tedious journey. On top of that, success is not a continuous uphill path. There are many roadblocks, pitfalls, and plateaus. You could be stuck in the same stagnant position for years before suddenly breaking out in massive success. This is where platforming comes in. After refining your craft to a precise art, someone may eventually come across your works and not only feel that much more people need to know about what you're doing, but also be in a position to give you that extra exposure. So platforming is when someone with a much bigger audience than you puts you on their platform, exposing you to more people than you could have ever gotten yourself in front of by just growing organically in the same time frame. This is how performing artists who are 10 years in the making break out as overnight stars, seemingly. By being platformed, someone could be bringing you orders of magnitude more value. You could be making them richer and richer while you continue to struggle. And to the untrained mind, this may seem incredibly unfair and exploitative. But there's another way to look at it. While you're being platformed, you are building a bigger audience in the community for yourself that you can tap into more in the future. You'll get to meet people in high places who can be invaluable to the direction your career takes in the future. You'll also get to see a much closer look at the inner workings of an operation that has done much more and much better than you have ever done. So you get to pick up skills, you get to pick up insights, philosophies, the shortcuts, avoid the pitfalls, you get to build connections, etc. that you can leverage in the future when you develop your own platform on a bigger level. So David erred in his judgment when he said that the rich man was wrong for asking for the poor man's one resource. The rich man was better qualified to make it flourish and bring the most benefit out of it. But the poor man and David only saw the rich man as wanting to make himself richer at the expense of the poor man. This limited thinking and perception is toxic when it comes to the growth of a materially advancing community of progressive workers and thinkers. The destiny for human beings is full, harmonious expression in balanced community life. We have to have the mind to invest what resources we have with the people who have our best interest in mind and at heart, and are better qualified to bring the benefits out of those resources. This is how we must be thinking. So many of us work so hard for so long to build our own individual circumstances up, not realizing that we're doing more to hold ourselves back. Many of the most successful investors and entrepreneurs look for partners who have strengths and qualifications that they do not have. People with a scarcity mindset do not want to give away. They don't want to give away any of what they have to make someone else who has a lot more than they do even richer and more successful. But with an abundance mentality, it wouldn't even bother you to let a skilled investor and entrepreneur leverage your resource to make themselves more rich, especially because they're growing the asset and you're benefiting more than you would have on your own. So we put money in banks who loan it out and multiply the profits for themselves many, many times over, while only giving us back a fraction of a single percentage of interest. People give little thought to that at all, but they'll heavily resist giving their resources to someone who they know in order to help make that person richer. If you have an abundance mentality, it doesn't bother you to let a skilled investor leverage your resources in order to see someone in your own community who looks like you get rich. Granted, You can't just trust any and everybody, but you need to find the people in your life who you can trust and support them so that they can be more successful. Their success is your success. The success of a member of our community is success for the whole community. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi.